היית לצנם, מן האדמה פירתה יפלטני. יודע שהמך הולך, יספרה כל נפלאותייך. זמרת היפים ונקת תהילים, צועדת על הים, נוצרת צפנים, פורצת ושקיעה עונה יום וליל, המלכה היכלתי בדורות מלכות לחיים. אך נשלחה ונתרא, וברכה לפני פורתנו, אילנות ניתן להתמודד, מפלצות נעשנה, נשים לנו בתאים, שרית בקודש נשים.
Bereishit, in the beginning, that is the first word in the Torah. But that word cannot be taken lightly. It's like the seed that has all the future hidden code within it. The more you go to the source, the more depth you will find. So let's dive right into this word, Bereishit, which means in the beginning. But if you spell it out differently, you'll also have the word Aleph, Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Tishrei, because on that day, the world was created. The word Bereshit also spells Bait Rosh, which means the house first, the first speck of the world from where the world spread to be what it is today, according to Judaism, is at the holiest point of the world, where the Holy of Holies sat. And that was in Temple Mount, still holy till today, according to Judaism. The word Bereshit also spells Barashte. God created two worlds, this world and the world to come. Bereshit also spells Yareh Shabbat, to fear Shabbat or to see Shabbat. Because when God created the world, he saw the end result, Shabbat. Like we say in Lechadot, Sof Ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. The end result is always at the initial thought. Whenever you create something, the end result is what's in mind. Shabbat is the end result. And Shabbat in this world is a little taste of the ultimate Shabbat in the world to come. It's Me'en Olam Haba, where there's no creativity. It's just us being and connecting. And the biggest Shabbat is the world to come, where we can absorb that goodness of Hashem, which is really the only good there is. And that's why this world was created in the first place. The word Bereshit also spells Barashit, which means created 6 days of the week. There was creation. We also know that there'll be 6,000 years for this world, at least for the first stage of this world. And we currently are in the year 5781. The word Bereshit also spells Berit Esh, the covenant of fire. What's called a Brit Esh of fire? What's called a covenant of fire? The Torah. Because fire is what purifies things. And the way to purify ourselves and become the best person that we can be is to stick to the directions of the Torah. There is also a discussion of why it started with the letter Bet and not Aleph. I mean, Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the answer given is because it's a bracha. Bet stands for bracha, blessing. The Torah wants us to be blessed. After all, God created the world for us to give to us. Aleph is also the numerical value of 1. Bet is the numerical value of 2. The first letter is 2, Bet, because it represents the two worlds, the physical world and the world to come. 2 also represents the two Torahs that we have, the written Torah, and the Torah is telling me there's another Torah hidden in this Torah called the oral Torah. Finally, on a Kabbalistic level, 2 represents the finite world that we're in, where it appears that everything's separated. Aleph represents Hashem. as its numerical value is 1. It goes in all directions, and Bet turns away, if you look at it, away from the letter Aleph, reminding us that when the finite world was created, God, who is infinite, is now hidden. What happened before a finite world is a reality that's beyond our limited comprehension. God is hidden from us. And when we are in a finite space, we see that God is hidden from us. That's why the world is also olam, which means in Hebrew, ne'elam, hidden. The word for Hashem, Elokim, is the numerical value of 86, which turns out to be the same numerical value of Hateva, which is nature. Because the natural world which we see is physical and finite, and it hides our ability to see the infinite. This and so much more is all hidden in the word Bereishit, in the beginning. Because when you understand that this is a book written by the creator of the universe, the depth behind it is unlimited, and it has to be unlimited. Thank you for listening.
Interesting.
A bird's eye view of the Torah itself. It's broken into 5 books, and you have to wonder why. So if we look at just the titles, the names of the 5 books, we get to see an interesting thing. In English or Latin or Greek or whatever it is, the first book of Torah is called Genesis. But Genesis means the beginning, the origins. The word Bereishit, the Hebrew name for the book, Bereishit, in the beginning, emphasizes that it is not the beginning. It's early on, but it is not the beginning. So that translation is a bit misleading. In the beginning means that the plan itself, the origins of the world, is a plan, not an act of creation. So before you actually do creation, you first have to have a vision, a blueprint, a plan. And it's the vision that is the beginning of creation. And early on in that vision, God said, let there be light. But saying, let there be light, or even creating the earth, that's not the beginning. It doesn't start with creation. I mean, literally, it starts with creator, not with creation. So where does creation happen within God? When he actually creates? No, it must have its origins in a more embryonic state. So the real origin, the real beginning, the true genesis of creation is God's desire, which produced a plan, which produced a vision, which produced the actual making of the world. So there's one plan, and that is God wants a dwelling place in the lowest world. That was the vision, that you create all the worlds down to the lowest where you can go no further, and then elevate that to become one with him and complete the circle, and everything becomes one. So ultimately, God is about oneness. Now, the first project in any true creation, or the first step in any project, is who you're working with. Who are you working with? God's plan is that the world should become a dwelling place for him. Well, who's going to do it? What's your cast of characters? Who's your staff? The first book of the Torah is just cast of characters. That's what it is. It introduces you to Adam and Chava, to Noach, to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and they go down to Egypt, and that's where it ends. So basically what we're told is there is a people, there's a chain. It starts with Avraham. It finishes with the tribes, the 12 tribes who make up the Jewish people. Now you know who is responsible for making the world a dwelling place for God. End of project 1. And so the book ends. The next book is really the next project. What's the next step? Now what? You know who's going to do it? What do you need to know now? The next step is where? Location. Where is this dwelling place going to be? In the lowest world, but in what part of the lowest world? Where in the lowest world? Some people feel, some religions believe, God exists in your mind, in your heart, in your faith, in your higher faculties. He's experienced only as a religious experience, as a spiritual event. The physical world is the enemy. It encumbers you, it limits you, it drags you into all sorts of unholy stuff. God is not there. If you want God, you sit on a mountaintop, you meditate, and you find God. The second book of Torah says That's not where it happens. Because the second book of Torah primarily describes the construction.
The Torah
of
is
the
not in
Mishkan,
heaven.
of the tabernacle, in painstaking detail. Made out of wood, made out of gold, made out of copper. You make it this size, a cubit and a half. Very physical stuff. And that's where God dwells. This is his tabernacle, his meeting place. The rest of the book, of the second book, is practical laws, civil, social necessities, how to run a civilized society. There's nothing mystical in this book. And even the event at Sinai, God comes down and speaks to the people. That's kind of mystical. But the emphasis is God came down. We didn't go up. God came down to Mount Sinai. The whole emphasis of this book is focus on the lowest, the most physical, the most material part of the world. That's where God is going to dwell. You make tefillin out of leather, not out of good intentions. You make matzah out of flour, not out of faith. Not out of faith. And that's why the name, again, in Latin, it's called Exodus. Why? Because one of the stories, or maybe the first story in the book, is about the Exodus. All right. If you were going to name it after some significant event, it should be called Mount Sinai. Because the whole point of the Exodus was to get to Mount Sinai and receive the Ten Commandments. So the book should be called Sinai, Ten Commandments. But the name of the book is not just the name of this parsha. It's the whole book.
And that's a good place that we're going to start off on. So, without further ado, well, also, welcome back. We're, since Simchat Torah is past, or Simchat Torah is past, means that starting the book over. And it did start a bit of Bereishit before, but now we're actually going to start and finish Bereishit. So, Baruchu et Adonai Amvorach, Baruch Adonai Amvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. All right, so we're going to, should we do it like this? Yeah, because this way I can just control where the mouse is. Right. It would be nice if I had someone who could let me know. Oh, Shalom. Welcome, Zero. But yeah, I was just saying it would be nice if someone could tell me if this is able to be seen. Oh wait, yeah, I can see it myself. I don't know why I was freaking out. All right. Bereishit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, ve'aretz hayta tohu vavohu, v'choshech al pnei hatehom, ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim, vayomer Elohim vayehi or, vayehi or. וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך, ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום ולחושך קרא לילה, ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. ויאמר אלוהים יהי רקיע מתוך המים, ויהי מבדיל בין מים למים, ויעש אלוהים את הרקיע ויבדל בין המים אשר מתחת לרקיע ובין המים אשר מעל הרקיע, ויהי כן. ויקרא אלוהים לרקיע שמיים, ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום שני. So it's interesting. So it says when God began to create the heavens and the earth, and so you have light. Light is first, and then light gets separated from darkness. Then light is day, darkness is night. That's evening and morning. Then let there be an expanse in the midst of the water that may separate water from water. God made the expanse and separated the water, and which was below the expanse from the water, which was above the expanse. And that's when the heavens are created. So it's interesting. The heavens are only created on the second day, which that's kind of interesting. I never realized that before, but it's something I'm picking up on this reading. Yom Sheni. ויאמר אלוהים ייקבעו המים מתחת השמיים אל מקום אחד ותראה היבשה ויהי כן ויקרא אלוהים ליבשה ארץ ולמקווה המים קרא ימים ויראו אלוהים כי טוב. So now you have the dry land, the Yabasha, that becomes Eretz. So Eretz, but what's interesting is it implies that because, so it almost seems like in this context, the ancient world perception of the, well, and I mean, it makes sense because the world wasn't understood as the globe that we see now. It was more so you have because technically the heavens, they didn't think of the heavens to be like this, to be space. They thought of the heavens to be a sky, which is also a part of Earth. So technically all this stuff is a part of Earth as we think of it, but what they refer to as Earth is dry land. So it's kind of interesting, the different contexts that are implied here. ויאמר אלוהים תדשא הארץ דשא סב מזריע זרע עץ פרי עושה פרי למינו אשר זרעו בו על הארץ ויהי כן ותוצא הארץ דשא סב מזריע זרע למינהו ועץ עושה פרי אשר זרעו בו למינהו ויראו אלוהים כי טוב ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום שלישי ויאמר אלוהים ויהי מאורות ורקיע השמיים להבדיל בין היום ובין הלילה והיו לאותות ולמועדים ולימים Shuveshanim. So it's interesting. So this is on the third day. So the fourth day, I'm guessing, it's saying let there be lights and lights. So you don't even have light until the but this is the, so you have light before it, but these are the lights. So this isn't or, this is orot, the lights, or luminaries rather. So the lights in the, I think this might also be, this might be referring to stars as well, but it's not, it doesn't use kochavim. Because it's possible, this could be referring either to like the sun and the moon, or it could be referring to stars. Without further context, hard to know. והיו לי מאורות ברקיע השמיים להאיר על הארץ ויהי כן ויעש אלוהים את שני המאורות הגדולים את המעון הגדול לממשלת היום ואת המאור הקטן לממשלת הלילה ואת הכוכבים. Okay, so no, so this is, it's just saying the lights in general. And then, so So it's also interesting because God says, and then God does, or God makes. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Oh my God, please don't. Oh, it's ridiculous. Molly, what are you barking at? And I know she's about to bark again too. She's so funny. I'm having a stare down with her. Anyway, I know when I take my eyes off, she's going to start. Maybe not. I honestly. Anyway, so no, but when God says something, it's implying the it kind of also going on what, I forget who it was that we were listening to that was saying this, but when God desires something, that's the masculine part. But when God does something, that's the feminine part. So, and it's basically the idea of the what's the word? Atikiamin? No, the Zeranpin versus the Shekhinah, so like the masculine versus the feminine side of God. And it's connected with the what is it, like Chokhmah Bina, Keter Chokhmah and Bina versus the 7 Midot. Let's see. So, but yeah. So here, then it says that there's going to be yeah. So no, it just says what they're supposed to do, and then when God does it, it specifically says that it was 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night. And then the stars. So it's saying it rules over the stars. So maybe before it's actually implying, it might be implying that the stars were created first. I'm not sure though. I could always ask about that because, yeah, it says lights, me'orot, but then you have 2. Yeah, Shnei. So here it specifies 2. All right. ויתן אותם אלוהים ברקיע שמיים להאיר על הארץ למשול ביום ובלילה ולהבדיל בין האור ובין החושך. וירא אלוהים כי טוב, ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום רביעי. ויאמר אלוהים ישרצו המים שרץ נפש חיה ועוף יעופף על הארץ על פני רקיע השמיים. ויברא אלוהים את התנינים הגדולים ואת כל נפש החיה הרומסת אשר שרצו המים למיניהו ואת כל עוף כנף למיניהו. ויראו אלוהים כי טוב, ויברך אותם אלוהים לאומר פורו ומילאו את המים בימים העוף ירב בארץ. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום חמישי. ויאמר אלוהים תוצא הארץ נפש חיה למינה בהמה ורמס וחי תוערץ למינה. ויהי כן. ויעש אלוהים את חיית הארץ למינה ואת הבהמה למינה ואת כל רמס האדמה למינהו. וירא אלוהים כי טוב. ויאמר אלוהים נעשה האדם בצלמנו קדמותינו וילדו בדגת הים ובעוף השמיים ובבהמה ובכל הארץ ובכל הרמס הרומס על הארץ. ויברא אלוהים את האדם בצלמו בצלם אלוהים ברא אותו זכר ונקבה ברא אותם. ויברך אותם אלוהים ויאמר להם אלוהים ברורו ומילאו את הארץ וכבשוה ורדו בדגת הים ובעוף השמיים ובכל חיה רומסת על הארץ. ויאמר אלוהים הנה נתתי לכם את כל עשב זורע זרע אשר על פני כל הארץ ואת כל העץ אשר בו פרי עץ זורע זרע לכם יהיה לאכלה ולכל חיית הארץ ולכל עוף השמיים ולכל רומס על הארץ אשר בו נפש חיה את כל ירק עשב לאכלה ויהי כן. So it's saying all green herbs are for consumption. וירא אלוהים את כל אשר עשה והנה טוב מאוד. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום השישי. Wait one moment. Let's see, one moment. I'm just sending this link to someone. Okay, so that was the first aliyah, or no, not the first. I'm sorry, the first chapter. Derp. All right. Let's see. 2 goes until I want to figure out how much, because I might just. Oh wait, I skipped. Shoot. So 2. Okay, I can do that. 25. I just need to give my voice a small little break.
In Hebrew, the name of the second book is Shmos, which means names. Now that's a strange title, because the book begins with an account of who was in Egypt and who were the children, and the names of the children of Israel. Names are given when a soul comes down into a body. Souls in heaven have no names. In fact, when Jacob was wrestling with the angel and he said, "What's your name?" And he said, "What are you asking? We don't have names. We don't go by names up in heaven." So the souls that are even greater and higher than angels certainly don't have names. The name is useful when the soul comes into a body and you need to connect the soul to the body. There needs to be some channel of flow of energy and of communication between the soul and the body. The name facilitates that connection. And that's why when a person needs a blessing for health, the blessing, the Mishaberach, is made with the name and the mother's name. The name is your channel for connection to your soul. So what does this mean? The second book of Torah is about names. It's not about souls in heaven. It's about souls when they come down into a body, which is when names become relevant. So briefly, the whole book of Shmos, which is the second book, is about where in your home, in your possessions, in your physical life, in your physical activities, in your food, So when people say, isn't it strange that God has commandments concerning food, concerning your bed, concerning your clothes, concerning your field and your scales at work, shouldn't we better not eat, not have work, shops, not make money, live on a mountaintop and disavow all physical, material? No, the exact opposite. When our physical stuff becomes permeated with godliness, now we're fulfilling the whole purpose of creation. We get to the third book, we don't have to go into that. The third book is how. All right, we know who, we know where, now how. The third book of Torah is all about sacrifices. That's why it's called Leviticus. It's the job of the tribe of Levi to be the priest and the kohen and perform the sacrifices. A sacrifice means literally you take a goat or a lamb, you bring it to the temple, you put it up on the mizbeach, on the altar, and it rises and is consumed by the divine fire. You actually see the physical become spiritual or godly. The how. How do you elevate an ordinary goat and turn it into something holy?
The covenant of fire.
The fourth book, very briefly, is called Desert, in the desert. In English, it's called Numbers. Again, it's not a good translation. In the desert, the fourth book is about when. So the first book is who, the second book is where, the third book is how, the fourth book is when. Because, we got to have like
The book is why?
An update, a report on how are we doing. Is the world getting any holier? Are we succeeding? The fourth book is about when. Briefly, is called Desert, in the desert. In English, it's called Numbers. Again, it's not a good translation. In the desert, the fourth book is about when. So the first book is who, the second book is where, the third book is how, the fourth book is when. Because we got to have like an update, a report on how are we doing. Is the world getting any holier? Are we succeeding at all? Very often, well, for most of our history, the world looked like a desert. Nothing's growing. Nothing's happening. We're not making any progress. Here we thought, just as an example, after the Holocaust, there would never be anti-Semitism again. Right. So it's a desert. It's not getting any better. Or so it seems on the surface. The fourth book of Torah says, even when things look like they're deserts, nothing's growing, it's desolate, it's underneath, we're making progress. Every day we're getting closer. It keeps moving, it keeps building and accumulating. The bad stuff burns off after a time. The good lasts forever. Then the fifth book is the conclusion. When we're ready to enter the promised land. In other words, before Mashiach comes, when the plan has been completed, and then we move up to how do you live in a perfected and completed world. So basically what it's saying is there's one Torah, not 5 Torahs. There's one Torah because there's one plan, there's one vision, there's one desire that God has. And it comes in 5 stages, in 5 volumes.
Shalom Aleichem. How are you? I do a lot of talking, a lot of Zooming, many classes, many subjects. But that's all formal stuff. Hopefully good stuff, but formal. We also have a Wednesday night meeting that's more informal and kind of Hamish. If you want to join us for that kind of an event, interactive, time for questions and so on. If you want to join us for this side of conversation, click on the link below and join us every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. Well, maybe not every Wednesday night, but we try to make it every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, a more informal chat, which can be more enjoyable at times than the formal stuff. So check it out. Click on the link and join us. Try it. You'll like it.
Sorry, one moment. Shoot, hold on. I kind of got caught off guard. Oh, okay, wait, here we could start. Give me one moment. Dang it. So I just kind of realized, apparently I have something that I didn't realize I had, so I'm like a bit more starved for time. Right, so it's definitely interesting, though. The idea that there's so much hidden in Genesis. I mean, it is my favorite book of the Torah, I think. I don't know why. I just very much enjoy it. I think it's because of how mythical all of it is. You know, it goes back to these one second. One moment. Alright. Here, I need to close out these tabs real quick.
That somehow that.
ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם. When they're in all their array. No, this is all their armies. And all their hosts, all the hosts of heaven. ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. אלה תולדות השמיים והארץ בהיברם ביום עשות אדוני אלוהים ארץ ושמיים וכל שיח השדה טרם יהיה בארץ וכל עשב השדה טרם יצמח כי לא המטיר אדוני אלוהים עד הארץ ואדם אין לעבוד את האדמה ועד יעלה מן הארץ וישקע את כל פני האדמה ויצר אדוני אלוהים את האדם עפר מן האדמה ויפח באפיו נשמת חיים ויהי האדם לנפש חיה. ויטע אדוני אלוהים גן בעדן מקדם וישם שם את האדם אשר יצר ויצמח אדוני אלוהים מן האדמה כל עץ נחמד למראה וטוב למאכל ועץ החיים בתוך הגן העץ הדעת טוב ורע ונהל יוצא. So it's interesting here you also have the mention of the tree of life in the middle of the garden בתוך העץ ועץ הדעת טוב ורע and the tree of knowledge of the knowledge of good and evil. Now it's interesting because it doesn't say where it is. So it's very possible that they're actually just one and the same tree. And that in order to become aware of life, one must also become aware of death and good and evil. Like basically, to become aware of good and evil, to become aware of life also requires the knowledge that one will die. So I think that it's not so much a curse as much as it is a blessing and a curse. But ונהר יוצא מעדן להשקות את הגן ומשם ייפרד והיה לארבע ראשים. שם האחד פישון הוא הסובב את כל ארץ החבילה, אשר שם הזהב וזהב הארץ ההיא, טוב שם הבדולח ואבן השוהם. ושם הנהר השני גיחון הוא הסובב את כל ארץ כוש. ושם הנהר השלישי חידקל הוא ההולך קדמת אשור. והנהר הרביעי הוא פרת. Interesting. So Chidekel is the tigress. What does that mean? Chadak. Chidekel, rapid. Whatever is better known as the tigress. Interesting. What was the Persian equivalent? Persian is Tigra. Tiklat. So this is from Assyrian. Idiklat. So Chidekel. Idiklat. Chidekel. Interesting. And then Parat is Euphrates. ויקח אדוני אלוהים את האדם ויניחהו בגן עדן לעבודה ולשמרה. Interesting. So it's so interesting. This is where people get the idea that the man wasn't created in Eden, that he was placed there. Vayitzav. Let me see if I got any. All right. Let's see. ויצב אדוני אלוהים עד האדם לאומר מכל עץ הגן אחותו אכל ומעץ הדעת טוב ורע לא תאכל ממנו כי ביום אכלך ממנו מות תמות. Interesting. I wonder Tamut, that'd be Tamut, Hufa, Tamut, forget which form that Tamut be killed. I wonder if in a different context this actually could be read as Motamut, not simply saying you will certainly die, but it actually might saying mot will kill you or death will kill you, which seems repetitive, but in a context where death was an entity itself, that has a different connotation, potentially. Right. ויאמר אדוני אלוהים לא טוב היות האדם לבדו אעשה לו עזר כנגדו. And Adonai Elohim said, it is not good for man to be by itself, and so I shall make for it a partner to complement it. ויצר אדוני אלוהים מן האדמה כל חיית השדה ואת כל עוף השמיים ויבא לאדם לראות מה יקרא לו וכל אשר יקרא לו אדם נפש חיה הוא שמו ויקרא אדם שמות לכל הבהמה ולעוף השמיים ולכל חיית השדה ולאדם לא מצא עזר כנגדו. Interesting, there was no counterpart for man, just like there was no counterpart for the Sabbath. I wonder if there's a parallel there. There probably is. Also, I'm glad he couldn't find any fitting counterpart from any of the animals. That would be concerning. ויפל אדוני אלוהים תרדמה על האדם וישן ויקח אחת מצלעותיו ויסגור בשר תחתנה. The under part beneath. Oh, tachtena. Interesting. But yeah, that he was put into a deep sleep, basically anesthetized, and mitzalotav from his side, rib, beam, potentially even referring to the baculum. Not getting into that now, but basically it's referring to a progenerative bone, one that humans don't have because we evolved out of it. But at his sides, cellular ribs, yeah. All right. ויבן אדוני אלוהים את הצלע שלקח מן האדם לאישה ויביא אל האדם ויאמר האדם זאת הפעם עצם מעצמי ובשר מבשרי לזאת יקרא אישה כי מאיש לוקחה זאת. So it's interesting. At this point, he's just referred to as Ish. So he's a man. Yeah, before it was Adam, but now he's like an Ish, and because it was taken from her, that she's called Isha. על כן יעזב איש את אביו ואת אמו ודבק ואשתו והיו לבשר אחד ויהיו שניהם מרומים האדם ואשתו ולא יתבוששו. Interesting. So, yeah. And the two of them were naked, and they did not know it. Or rather, they were not ashamed, because they did not know to be ashamed. Okay, let's see. So, how much is in this? Ooh, that's a lot. Low key. I might have it read a bit. 1 second. We're going to find
Shalom. It's a brand new year, and creation has been renewed. We've all been renewed. So it's quite fitting that this week we experience the restart of the yearly cycle of Torah readings with this Shabbat's Torah portion of Parshah Beresheit, in the beginning, the first Torah portion of the book of Genesis. Our whole experience of the past few weeks was geared towards our recreation. The ultimate goal of the High Holy Days, all the way through Sukkot, was to recalibrate our lives and help us to put our priorities in order. Indeed, our entire focus over all these weeks has been on recognizing God as King of the universe and on deepening our awareness of God in our lives and working on bettering the fine points of our relationship with Him with the climax of Simchat Torah, rejoicing over the gift of the Torah itself and celebrating its preeminence in our lives as we begin again. This week's Torah portion of Parshah Beresheit opens upon the beginnings of our universe with the vastness of a sprawling, magnificent creation that was brought about by Hashem from nothing at all. The world was built with kindness, King David prays in Psalms 89. Our sages expound upon this concept that it was God's attribute of kindness, the divine desire to bestow goodness upon man, which was the reason for creation and the foundation of all existence. Yet our sages tell us that God foresaw that the world could not exist through kindness alone, and so he tempered creation with the attribute of divine justice as well. That dichotomy forms the backdrop of our lives. On the sixth day of creation, Rosh Hashanah, Adam and Eve were created and placed in this beautiful world and given the keys to bring it all together, meaning they were given the opportunity to connect heaven and earth and reveal the unity of all reality, which is God's perfect unity. They were given only one commandment, not to eat from the tree of knowledge. By obeying God's command, they would have brought the world to its perfection and fulfilled the purpose of creation. But instead, Adam made a choice. And the fact is, free will, man's ability to choose, is how God wants us to serve him in this world. The episode of the Tree of Knowledge instructs us that this world is a world of choices, of tests, and man, meaning each and every one of us, is placed here in order to choose between right and wrong, between life and death, between following God's commandments or following after our own imagination. So there is a very deep idea that the whole reason Adam ate from the tree was so that he would be able to serve God in spite of the presence within himself of the evil inclination, which originally had been an external factor as represented by the snake, but that upon eating from the tree, it became part of his nature. In other words, it's possible to view his act of disobeying God as a deliberate attempt to get closer to God. It's vital that we try to understand Adam and judge him favorably, even as we understand that all the damage and confusion and concealment that was brought into existence is a result of his poor choice, a result of his failing his test. Still, all the revealed goodness in the world is also thanks to him. Humanity is the crowning glory of creation, and man's role in the world, Torah teaches us, is staggering. By overcoming his own desire to be in control, by listening to Hashem and making good choices, by acknowledging that God is in control, he completes and perfects all creation. But the bottom line, there is no simple level of meaning in this Torah portion at all. And there's so much that's difficult to understand. Creation itself, the creation of Adam and Eve, their sin and expulsion, the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge, the snake. See, the physical representation of all these concepts corresponds to vast spiritual realities. But even if there are things that we do not immediately and readily understand, we know that Torah, the word Torah, means instruction. And the purpose of Torah is instruction for life. And we need to endeavor to understand our direct connection to all of this. So open up your heart. This is the book of the generations of man, verse 1 of chapter 5 tells us. This is the Sefer of Adam. What is the family album, this book that this verse refers to? Our sages teach that God showed Adam every soul that was ever destined to descend from him. This is our world, and so creation is our story, and Adam is the father of us all. So his saga is our own story. He's the handiwork of God and the root and source of all who we are and all that transpires in the lives of all of us. So open up your heart in the very deepest way. Let's start at the beginning with verse 1. In the beginning, God created Hashamayim v'ha'aretz, the heavens.
Hi, I'm 𤤁𤓚𝐻𝐷, and welcome to the very first episode of the Parsha Rabbit Hole. This is for Parshah Beresheit, which is the very first Parsha, so that is thing. This is the Parsha video share series thingy, where I am hopefully going to, instead of giving you a nice tidy little package, I'm going to show you the weird and winding paths that I took. So let's get started. Parshah Beresheit, as we know, begins with the creation story, first day, second day, third day, blah, blah, blah. Adam and Chava are created, they do the whole fruit thingy, they get banished, then they have children, Cain and Hevel. Cain and Abel, Cain kills Hevel, and then we get some lineages. So-and-so bore so-and-so, and so-and-so bore so-and-so. First, we get the lineage of Cain. There is no lineage of Hevel because he's dead, and then we get the lineage of Adam and Chava's third son, Sheth. But first, what we're looking at is the lineage of Cain. That's Cain. So when we go down the lineage of Cain, eventually we get to 𝐤𝐓. There's actually two 𐤁𝐓s. One of them is from Cain, one of them is from Sheth, but we're going to focus on the Cain 𐤁𝐓, who has 2 wives and 4 children. First wife, they have 2 sons. Second wife, they have a son and a daughter. What I remembered from previous years is that some of these people that are mentioned, some of them are just names, and then some of them, we learned that they established some sort of important concept in civilization. But what I did not remember was the names of all of them, and 2 names jumped out to me in particular, and that was Yovel and Yuval, or Jabal and Jubal. I'm going to say Jabal and Jubal because it sounds funnier. Anyways, here's the verse. It says, V'teled Ada as Yovel, and Ada bore Jabal, and he was the ancestor of all those who dwell in tents and with herds, and his brother was Jubal, who was the father of all who hold the kinnor and ugov, which are instruments. So this translation says the lyre and the pipe. Okay. Let's just accept that for now. First place we're going to jump into is Rashi. That's always the first go-to commentator that we're going to look at when we're learning the Parsha. So what Rashi does is Rashi brings a medrash that says that Yovel and Yuval, Jabal and Jubal, they didn't just make tents and music. They made tents for idol worship, for avodah zarah, and music to draw people into idol worship, which is kind of a downer. Obviously not to disparage Rashi. Of course, Rashi was a very special and holy person, but Rashi tends
בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ והארץ הייתה תוהו ויאמר אדוני אלוהים לא טוב היות האדם לבדו יעשה לו עזר כנגדו וייסר אדוני אלוהים מן האדמה כל חיית השדה ואת כל עוף השמיים ויבט אל האדם לראות ויקרא לו וכל אשר יקרא לו האדם נפש חיה הוא שמו ויקרא האדם שמו לכל הבהמה ולעוף השמיים ולכל חיית ופרס איש את אביו ואת אמו ודבק באשתו ולא אדוני אלוהים ויום והנחש היה ערום מכל חיית השדה אשר עשה אדוני אלוהים ויאמר אל האישה אף כי אמר אלוהים לא תאכלו מכל עץ הגן ותאמר האישה אל הנחש מפרי עץ הגן נאכל ומפרי העץ אשר בתוך הגן אמר אלוהים לא תאכלו ממנו ולא תיגעו בו פן תמותון ויאמר הנחש אל האישה לא מות תמותון כי יודע אלוהים כי ביום אכלכם ממנו ונפתחו עיניכם והייתם כאלוהים יודעי טוב ורע ותרא האישה כי טוב העץ למאכל וכי צאוהו לעיניים ונחמד העץ להשכיל ותקרא מפריו ותאכל ותיתן גם לאישה עמה ויאכל ותפקח עיני שניהם וידעו כי עירומים הם ויספרו על עיניו ויעשו להם חפורות וישמעו את קול אדוני אלוהים מחלך בגן לרוח היום ויחבא האדם ואשתו מפני אדוני אלוהים בתוך עץ הגן ויקרא אדוני אלוהים אל האדם ויאמר לו אייכה ויאמר את קולך.
That's interesting. So there it says La Ruach Hayom, in the direction of the evening sun. That doesn't make sense to the spirit of the day, literally.
שמעתי בגן ואירא כי עירום אנוכי ואחכה ויאמר מי הגיד לך כי עירום אתה המן העץ אשר צוויתי לך לבלתי אכול ממנו אכלת ויאמר האדם האישה אשר נתת עמדי היא נתנה לי מן העץ ואוכל ויאמר אדוני אלוהים לאישה מה זאת עשית ותאמר האישה הנחש השיאני ואוכל ויאמר אדוני אלוהים אל הנחש כי עשית זאת ארור אתה מכל הבהמה ומכל חיית השדה על גחונך תלך ועפר תאכל כל ימי חייך ואיבה אשית בינך ובין האישה ובין זרעך ובין זרעה הוא ישופך ראש ואתה תשופנו עקב אל האישה אמר הבא 14 בונך והרונך ו10 תלדי בנים ואל אשך תשוקתך והוא ימשול בך ולאדם אמר כי שמעת לכל אשתך ותאכל מן העץ אשר זויתיך לאמור לא תאכל ממנו ארורה האדמה בעבורך ועשרון תאכלנה כל ימי חייך וחוס ודרכה תצמיח לך ואכלת את עשב השדה וזיעת אפיך תאכל לחם עד שובך אל האדמה כי ממנה לקחת כי עפר אתה ואל עפר תשוב ויקרא האדם שם אשתו חווה כי היא היפה אין כל חי ויעש אדוני אלוהים לאדם ולאשתו כותנו עור וילבישם ויאמר אדוני אלוהים אין האדם היה כאחד ממנו לדעת טוב ורע ועתה ונשלח ידו ולקח גם מעץ החיים ואכל וחי לעולם וישלחהו אדוני אלוהים מגן עדן.
So here it literally says that because of that, man has become like one of them. And it almost implies that if they would have had access to the tree, they would have become one of them. But again, what does it mean to be one of them? That's kind of the contention. But yeah.
לעבוד את האדמה אשר לוקה בשם ויגרש את האדם וישכן מקדם לגן עדן את הקרובים ואת תלת הערב המתהפכת לשמור את דרך עץ החיים.
And here you have the mention of the ever-turning sword, or that was the cherev, cherev lahat hacherev. That's one of the really interesting things. It's like the ever-turning blazing sword that the cherub, the Kruv carries. It's very interesting. One of the things that's always caught my attention. Well, so no, because it was La Ruach Hayom, to the light of the day. They're to the direction of the day. I guess it's saying to the direction of the sun, following the sun, which eventually goes to sundown. I think that it's literally just that they're trying to read into it so that they don't have to explain what the spirit of the day is. That dawn begins the evening. Huh? Yeah, and that's kind of what I mean, in a sense.
והאדם ידע את חווה אשתו ותמת ותלד את קין ותאמר אני איש את אדוני ותוסף ללדת את אחיו את הבל ויהי הבל רועי צאן
Okay, so now we're getting to the part about Cain and Abel, and so once we do that, then we'll listen to the Torah bit, whatever, because dang it, it's going to be a bit late, but I do want to listen to that as well. So we'll get to the point where Cain goes off and has his family.
היה עובד אדמה ויהי מחס ימים ויבא קין מפרי האדמה מנחה לאדוני והבל הביא גם הוא מבכורות צאנו ומהלבן וישע אדוני אל הבל ואל מנחתו ואל קין ואל מנחתו לא שער וייחר לקין מאוד ויפלו פניו ויאמר אדוני אל קין למה חרה לך ולמה נפלו פניך הלא אם תטריב זאב ואם לא תטריב לפתח חטאת רובס ואליך תשוקתו ואתה תמשול בו ויאמר קין אל הבל אחיו ויהי אותם בשדה ויקום קין אל הבל אחיו וירדמו ויאמר אדוני אל קין את הבל אחיך ויאמר לא ידעתי השומר אחי אנוכי ויאמר מה עשית כל דמי אחיך צועקים אלי מן האדמה ועתה אבואת מן האדמה אשר בעשית את פיה לקחת את דמי אחיך מידיך כי תעבוד את האדמה לא תוסף תפקוחה לך נעונת תהיה בארץ ויאמר קין אל אדוני גדול עווני נשוא הן גירשת אותי היום מעל פני האדמה ומפניך אסתר והייתי נעונת בארץ והיה כל מוצאי יהבני ויאמר לו אדוני לכן כל הורי קין שבעתיים יוקם וישם אדוני לקין עוז לביתי הכוס אותו כל מוצאו ויצא קין לפני אדוני וישב בארץ נוז קדמת עדן וידע קין את אשתו ותהת ותלד את חנוך ויהי בונה עיר ויקרא שם העיר כשם בנו חנוך ויוולד לחנוך את עירק ועירק ילד את מחויאל וחיאל ילד את מתושאל ומתושאל ילד את למך ויקח לו למך שתי נשים שם האחת עדה ושם השני צלה ותלד עדה את יבל הוא היה אבי יושב אוהב ומחנה ושם אחי יובל הוא היה אבי כל תופס כינור ועמרם וסלה גם היא ילדה את תובל קין לא דש כל חורש נחושת וברזל ואחוף תובל קין נעמה ויאמר למך לנשה עדה וסלה שמען קולי נשה למך האזנה אמרתי כי איש הרבתי לפסעי וילד לחבור אבי כי שבעתיים יוקם קין ולמך 77 וידע אדם את אשתו ותלד בן ותקרא את שמו שת כי שת לי אלוהים זרע אחר תחת הבל כי הרבו קין ולשב גם הוא יולד בן ויקרא את שמו אנוש אז הוא חל לקרוא בשם אדוני זה ספר תולדות אדם ביום ברוב אלוהים אדם בדמות אלוהים עשה אותו זכר ונקבה ברעם ויברך אותם ויקרא את שמם אדם ביום בלעם ויהי אדם 30 שנה ויולד בדמותו כצלמו ויקרא את שמו שף ויהיו ימי אדם אחרי הולידו את שף 800 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהיו כל ימי אדם אשר חי 900 שנה ו30 שנה וימות ויהי שף 5 שנים ומעט שנה ויולד את אנוש ויהי שף אחרי הולידו את אנוש 7 שנים ו800 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהיו כל ימי שף 12 שנה.
So here when it's talking about Seth being born to Adam, it says that Adam bore where is it? Let's see, where does it say? That Adam he begot. So it's not saying that he birthed him, but like that, he begot in his image, or in his likeness, like his image. It's the same language that's used to describe God creating Adam. So there's something really interesting going on here, and I don't quite know how to explain it. It almost seems to be implying Adam was a kind of demigod.
شنا شامخ شنا ويموت ويهي إنوش 90 سنة ويولد اثنان ويهي إنوش أحرق ولد اثنان 15 سنة و800 سنة ويولد بنين وبنات ويهي كل يوم إنوش 5 سنين و900 سنة ويموت ويهي قنان 70 سنة ويولد اسمها هذا الليل ويهي قنان أحرق ولد اسمها هذا الليل 40 سنة و800 سنة ويولد بنين وبنات.
You have some names that later go on to civilization, cities, or people groups. So for instance, you have Irad, which you could maybe connect with Eridu. It's a bit of a actually not that, it's not that much of a stretch, but Arad to Eridu, Enoch or Hanoch to, what was it? Oh my god, I'm blanking on it. Hanoch. Wait, let's see. Arad. What's the other one? It's totally blanking. I'm totally blanking. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the other one is Canaan, potentially to Canaan, and then they have to introduce a secondary, descendant of Ham in order to imply the curse of Canaan, which really, I think, Canaan originally came from. What was it? This was the line of Seth they're talking about, I think. Yeah, this is from the line of Seth. Also knows this. I don't know if it meant, where is it? Enosh. Somewhere I read this earlier that when Enosh was born, that's when the name of God started to, or the name of 𝐤𝐁𝐻𝐵 started to be used, but I might be forgetting where it's.
15 سنة و800 سنة ويولد بنين وبنات ويهي كل يوم إنوش 5 سنين و900 سنة ويموت ويهي قنان 70 سنة ويولد اسمها هذا الليل ويهي قنان أحرق ولد اسمها هذا الليل 40 سنة و800 سنة ويولد بنين وبنات ويهي كل يوم قنان 10 سنين و900.
Yeah, okay, let's continue with this. Where was it?
𤁁𤓁𝐿 who were kissing somebody, turns out they were just trying to bite them. All right, so here Rashi takes these nice guys, they invented the concept of hence.
Yeah, maybe like Enoch with Uruk. I don't know, it was a bit of a stretch, but good guess, maybe.
And music, and he says,
well, good guess, I mean, but it might be what I was talking about.
No, they were doing it specifically for religious purposes, and not just religious purposes, but for idol worship. Okay, so now Rashi gives us a lead, which is the medrash that he got that from. And if we just repent, a very special and holy person. But Rashi tends to take fun things and just make them a downer. Like half of the people in 𤁁𝐿 who were kissing somebody, turns out they were just trying to bite them. All right, so here Rashi takes these nice guys, they invented the concept of tense and music, and he says, no, they were doing it specifically for religious purposes, and not just religious purposes, but for idol worship. Okay, so now Rashi gives us a lead, which is the medrash that he got that from. And if we follow that medrash, what we see is, it says Jubal was the father of all who hold the kinnor and the ugav, but then it translates those instruments into Aramaic. And it translates them as adrikulin or borbolin. So I did a little search. What did I find? First of all, it's very hard to search for them because they're spelled in a bajillion different ways. Eventually, I find the definitions of these words, and they come from Greek. Now, the first one, adrikulin, the kinnor, which is translated as lyre in the normal translation we have, which is like a harpy thingy. But the way the Jasper Dictionary translates it, and the way that the internet translates it from the Greek, is a flute player who's accompanying dancers. Actually, the internet translates to the Greek as dancers. Apparently, it's connected to flute players who play the flute for dancers. What kind of flute? Probably some sort of ancient duct flute, possibly a recorder. Why? Because when I typed that in Greek word, the transliteration of it into the Google box, what did I find? Some page about recorders. Also, recorders are very old. Internal duct flutes is the technical term, and they are associated with shepherds, which that's what Jubal's brother Jabal was, right? He had his livestock cattle ranch thingy. Now, the ugav, that's the one that I really spiraled down, because that one translates from the Greek as a hydraulis, which is a water organ. A water organ is an organ that air passes through it to make the sound, but that air is pushed through the force of water, and they have to pump water into it to make it go, and it's all burbly and watery, and it looks and sounds like this. So this rabbit hole has already paid off, but of course there
Happy
is
111
there's
of
a never-ending amount of more. Remember Rashi said, why did they invent tents and music? Because it was for avodah zarah, for idol worship. Well, the Aderes Eliyahu, which is the 𝐁𐤓𐤊𤄾, says differently. He seems to grab onto the idea that Ada gave birth first before Lamech's other wife, Tzila, and adds onto that and says that wasn't the only good thing that happened to her, but she also married Lamech, which is the 𝐁𤓚𤄾, says differently. He seems to grab onto the idea that Ada gave birth first before Lamech's other wife, Tzila, and adds onto that and says that wasn't the only good thing that happened to her, but she also merited to have wonderful sons who created beautiful things. Jabal created tents not for idol worship, but for God. Also, when it says that he tended herds and invented animal domestication, which means that he was praying to and serving the Lord in solitude off on his cattle ranch in Arizona. So now we got Rashi's version that they were idol worship guys and they invented these things for idol worship. And now we got the 𐤁𝐓 who says that yes, it was for religious purposes, but it was for monotheistic religious purposes, for serving the true God. But the Malbim says differently. He gives us a less religious interpretation and puts it more in the grand scheme of the development of civilization. What he says is that when Jabal started domesticating animals, he wasn't just inventing animal domestication. What he was inventing was the entire concept of private property, because him and his followers were growing up their stock of livestock, adding more and more, and they started trading with each other, and they made sure that mine is mine and yours is yours, until eventually they had developed commerce.
We need money. Some form of money.
Now he does the same thing with Jubal, but it sounds a little bit more dicey. He says the purpose of Jubal's music was that it was the song of the harlot. And this is where he does actually get a little bit religious about it, is he says that the idol worshippers, the way they would do the same thing with Jubal, but it sounds a little bit more dicey. He says the purpose of Jubal's music was that it was the song of the harlot. And this is where he does actually get a little bit religious about it, is he says that the idol worshippers, the way they would do things, the fraudulent ones, they would sing the songs of harlots, not just in their dining halls or taverns, but also in their houses of worship. And he says this is how music began, even though eventually it became something that was more revered and respectable, but it started out only for the purpose of, I quote, drawing the hearts of women.
In order to make his cave girls smile, he had to improve his whistle style.
And he connects the word ugov, which if you remember was one of the instruments that we mentioned earlier, to the phrase agavim, which is from a pasuk in 𤐁𤓓𤐾𤔗, Ezekiel, and it means love songs. So then that means that what did Jubal invent? A very, very, very old-fashioned love song coming down in three-part harmony. If you get that reference, put it in the comments. So now we've got Jubal using his music either like Rashi and the 𝐁𤓚𤄾 say for religious purposes, either for avodah zarah or for God, or we have Jubal using his music to win the hearts of lady friends. But then with a little more digging, what I find? One more approach, and that comes from the Netziv. And he uses the etymology of the name Yuval and connects it to the word 𝐻oivela, bringing or transporting. And he says that Yuval was working with his brother Yavel. Jubal and Jabal were working together. Why did Jubal make music? To draw his brother's animals along where they were supposed to go. But then the Netziv goes and does something that we haven't seen yet before.
Flute.
He answers an invisible question that's not there, but clearly he's answering it, which is, why does the Torah tell us that Jubal was the father of those who played these two instruments? Why not just say the ancestor of those who created music? So why the kinnor and the ugov? And he says, because these two different instruments do two different things. What Jubal discovered was that the kinnor could make the animals calm and sleepy, and the ugov would do just the opposite. It would make them move when you wanted them to get going and be active. So each one of those were useful for different purposes at different times. So now we got three reasons Jubal created music. One is for religious purposes. The second is he was making old-fashioned love songs. And the third is that it was more utilitarian. It was to help Jabal's cattle ranch business. But this idea of looking at the etymology of Jubal's name and connecting it to 𝐻oivela, bringing and transporting, that gets used somewhere else. It gets used in Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe in Torah says that the name Yuval means halakha, walking, leading, bringing something somewhere, and says that music raises things upwards. It causes things to ascend, probably the soul, because that's what Chassidus talks about. So now we have the concept of music that Jubal created at the beginning of human civilization is now reaching us, and how can we use it? We can use it spiritually to connect our souls upward. The Alter Rebbe explains that in more detail in the Likutei Torah, where he connects it to the idea of animal sacrifice. He says the entire idea of nullifying the something to the nothing. The something is us, the things that we think exist, and the nothing is God, the thing that we can't see. And that's kind of the whole goal of Chassidus, is to reunite our something with the real something, which we perceive as nothing. And how does that happen? Through karbonis, the animal sacrifices that were offered in the temple. Because inside of us, there's an animal soul. And that animal soul likes all sorts of animal things. And that's the part of ourselves that we're trying to reunite with something higher. What's the something higher? He says that animal soul's real source comes from the face of the ox, from the vision of 𝐁𝐓𝐾𝐗 on the chariot. So how do you take that lowly animal soul and turn it back into that lofty idea of the ox on the chariot? Is you have to raise it up through sacrifice and burning it on the altar in the temple. How was that done? The Kohanim did the actual sacrifice, but while they were doing that, the Leviim, the Levites, were singing and playing instruments. So that's through song, which also pairs Jabal and Jubal together again. You've got Jabal's animals that we offer as a sacrifice, or our animal soul. And how do we raise that up is through music, through Jubel's music, which of course as an artist is an interpretation that I really like. Now, being that I am an artist and a person of peace, I glossed over a verse that comes right after the verse that we've been dealing with this entire time. After Yovel and Yuval are born to Ada, Lamech's other wife Tzila has a son Tuval-Cain. So now we've got Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal. And what did Tubal or Tuval-Cain invent? It says he forged all items of copper and iron. He created tools and weapons, which is why I didn't really care about him, because weapons aren't my thing. But he had a sister, Nama, and not only is she more interesting than him, she actually makes him more interesting. The Targum Yonason on this verse about Tuval-Cain and his sister Nama gives us a little bit of extra background information. It's a translation into Aramaic, but it also explains things a little bit. And what it adds is that Nama was the mistress of elegies and songs. I don't know what elegies are. I think it's a fancy word for songs. So now we've got two more siblings, and one of them, Nama, is involved in the music thingy. So now we got a little duet between Nama and Jubal. But of course, the rabbit hole takes us even deeper than that. Abarbanel quotes Josephus, who is a Roman Jewish historian, and in Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus tells us even more.
An analogy is a poem.
He would learn how to make music because he would listen to his brother Tuval-Cain banging on the hammer, and he would start playing music along with the beat. Abarbanel goes further and says that Nama started singing because she would listen to Yuval's music and create songs unique to the instrumental music that Yuval was playing. So now it's not just a duet; it's a whole family band.
I knew he was going to make a joke about this.
𝐁𐤓𐤀🐃 4. We got Jabal, the road manager, with his tents taking care of the tour bus. We got Jubal on the hydraulics. We got Tuval-Cain doing percussion with his hammer. And we've got Nama on lead vocals. So now our journey down the rabbit hole has shown us that the Torah has given us an explanation for how civilization developed, and more importantly, given us the beautiful gift of the 𤐁𐤓𐤀🐃 family band. But the question we might be asking is, why does the Torah have to tell us this? Like, yeah, it's interesting to know how civilization started, but why does the Torah need us to know that? So according to Adaris Eliyahu, the Vilna Gaon, he says the whole reason why all this stuff is in here is so that we can learn how various different skills were spread throughout the world. Just like later on, we learn about the Tower of Babel by Migdal Bavel, the Dora Flugga. We learn about the scattering of the people and their languages all over the world, which teaches us how people got all over the place. Why does he say that's important, the Vilna Gaon? In order to negate the beliefs of the Epicureusim, the heretics, that the world is ancient. And I guess that all of this developed through evolution, maybe. I don't know exactly what heretical ideas were existing in a couple hundred years ago in the times of the Vilna Gaon, but something he didn't like, and he felt that the Torah wanted us to know that this is how things were established. Okay, great. So now we know that the reason why we have this whole story about all of these various different people developing different cornerstones of human civilization is so that we understand exactly how they developed from the creation story and got to us. But I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that, because in the very next parsha, what happens? There's a flood, and everyone is wiped out except for Noah, and his family. And Noah was from the lineage of Seth, and not from the lineage of Cain. So all of these Cain descendants that we've been talking about, Jabal and Jubal and Tubal and Nama, they died out. So the question becomes, how did all of their gifts to the development of civilization make a difference and get continued on? But the answer to that could be very simple. Some of you, your ears may have perked up when you heard the name Nama. Why? Raise your hand if you know who Nama was. That's right, 4 of you. Nama was the wife of Noach. And
What?
according to Rashi, that's exactly who we're talking about. On that verse where Nama is mentioned, Rashi explains this is the wife of Noach. But monkey wrench number 2. Of course, we can't just have one opinion. We're Jews. There's got to be multiple opinions. And that's exactly what happens in the Midrash. One opinion says, yes, Nama, this is Noach's wife. The other opinion says, no, Noach's wife Nama was a different Nama who isn't even mentioned at all, and that she was descended from Seth, from Shes. So the whole lineage comes from Shes and not from Cain. And in which case, we're back to our problem, which is, how did all of these innovations of society make it to us? So I raised this question to those close to me, and somebody gave me the very logical and reasonable answer that maybe once these things were innovated and created, they stuck around. But I think that there's a more interesting answer, and it involves gremlins. The Ramban, Nachmanides, raises a different problem with this Nama controversy. What he says is that if Nama is Noach's wife, then it makes sense that Torah mentions her, because she's significant, right? She's one of the 6 people that remained from whom Nama controversy. The Ramban, Nachmanides, raises a different problem with this Nama controversy. What he says is that if Nama is Noach's wife, then it makes sense that Torah mentions her, because she's significant, right? She's one of the 6 people that remained from whom civilization was rebuilt. But if she's not Noach's wife, then he asks, why would she be mentioned at all? But he says that there's another medrash that makes her important, and that one is about gremlins. The Hebrew word is shadim. Sometimes people don't even say it, they just spell it out, shin daled, and it's often translated as demons. I don't like that translation, because the word demon often has other religious connotations, and also the way that the shadim are talked about in the Gemara, they're just kind of mischievous little things going around, kind of causing trouble. They're not that bad, they're not evil. And therefore, I think the word gremlin is a better translation, and that's what I'm going to say. According to the Zohar, this Nama, the Nama that's not the wife of Noah, is the mother of the Shadim, the mother of all gremlins. And not just the mother of any gremlins, specifically the mother of Ashdai, the king of the gremlins. Okay, but still, how does that solve our problem? How did all of Jabal and Jubal and Tubal and Nama's teachings make it down to us if they all died out in the flood? So far, we've just been exploring the information that exists. Now I'm going to start pulling them all together to draw conclusions, and you can take it or leave it. But here it goes. What we're going to learn in next week's Parsha, Parshas Noach, when we learn about the flood, is that it wasn't just human beings and animals that made it onto the ark. The verse says, and we call Chai and we call Basar, from all living things and from all flesh, you should take 2 of them onto the ark. Okay, great. Take 2 of every animal. Fantastic. But why does it say it twice? Kol chai, kol basar, all life and all flesh. According to Rashi, it's to include not just living things that have flesh and bodies, but to include also living things that are alive but don't have bodies. What's that? Gremlins. So now we have a way that music got to us. How? Through the gremlins. They somehow made their way onto the ark, and that's how we have music. Again, I'm making that up. Nobody says that. I'm putting two and two together and drawing that conclusion. If the musical Nama was not Noach's wife, but was the mother of gremlins, then the way we got music was through the gremlins. But then what does that mean? And for that, we're going to end off with one more very cryptic piece from the Zohar. And this piece from the Zohar actually gives a different origin story of the gremlins. Deal with it. Maybe you can do like the comics do and say it's a multiverse situation. I don't know. You figure that out on your own. But what it says is that during the 6 days of creation, God created all the plants and animals and water and land and everything like that. And then we got to the 6th day after everything was created and decided to create the gremlins. God created their spirit, their souls, and hadn't created their bodies yet. And then it became Shabbos. The sun went down and it was Shabbos. No more work. God is done. Creation is over. And these gremlins are left as souls without bodies. According to the Zohar, this is something that was lacking in the world. It was a blemish on the world that remained until the Jews became sanctified. I guess that's at the giving of the Torah. And the Levites who were on the left side, I'm not going to explain the Kabbalistic significance of right and left. That's for a different rabbit hole. The Levites who were on the left side repaired the blemish on the left side, which was the bodiless gremlins. And what did the Levites do? What did we say was their job earlier on? They sang during the temple sacrifices, which could all add up to this. We got the music from the gremlins, and then we used the music to help the gremlins, which I think is wonderful. And so as an artist, and I hope this isn't presumptuous, but as a representative of the Jewish artist community, I reach out a hand to the gremlin community and say, gremlin brothers and sisters, we're all in this together. Amen. Okay, this has been the Parshah Rabbit Hole, and I have counted at least 4 things in this video that people could yell at me about in the comments. If you've spotted them, yell at me below. And if you ask any questions in the comments that I don't know the answer to, and I have to look it up, and it leads me down another rabbit hole, and I find something new and interesting, maybe I'll make a short video during the week about it. So put those below too. All right, thanks for following me down the rabbit hole. I hope you find your way out.
This was from last year. Okay. Let's see. Where is it here? Finish this up. We just have a few more minutes, and then
שנה וימות ויתמע על אל 5 שנים ו60 שנה ויולד את יערב ויתמע על אל אחרי הולידו את ירד 30 שנה ו800 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהיו כל ימי בעל אל 590 שנה ו800 שנה וימות ויתיירד 260 שנה ומעט שנה ויולד את חנוך ויתיירד אחרי הולידו את חנוך 800 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהיו כל ימי ירד 260 שנה 900 שנה וימות ויהי חנוך 560 שנה ויולד את מתושלה ויחלק חנוך את האלוהים אחרי הולידו את מתושלה 300 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהי כל ימי חנוך 560 שנה 300 שנה ויחלק חנוך את האלוהים ואיננו כי לקח אותו אלוהים ויהי מתושלה 780 שנה ומעט שנה ויולד את למך ויהי מתושלה אחרי הולידו את למך 280 שנה ו700 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהיו כל ימי מתושלה 960 שנה 900 שנה וימות ויהי למך 280 שנה ומעט שנה ויולד בן ויקרא את שמו נוח לאמור זה ינחמנו ממעשינו ומעצבון ידינו מן האדמה אשר אררה אדוני ויהי למך אחרי הולידו את נוח 590 שנה ו500 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות ויהי כל ימי למך 77 שנה ו700 שנה וימות ויהי נוח בן 500 שנה ויולד נוח את שם את חם ואת יפת ויהי כי יחל האדם לרוב על פני האדמה ובנות יולדו להם ויראו בני האלוהים את בנות האדם יטובות הנה וייקחו להם נשים מכל אשר בחרו ויאמר אדוני לא ידון רוחי באדם לעולם ושגם הוא בשר והיו ימיו 120 שנה הנפילים היו בארץ בימים ההם וגם אחרי כן אשר יבואו בני האלוהים אל בנות האדם וילדו להם הם הגיבורים אשר מעולם אנשי השם וירא אדוני כי רבה רעת האדם בארץ וכל יסת מחשבות ליבו רעה כל היום וינעם אדוני כי עשה את האדם בארץ ויחסר אל ליבו ויאמר אדוני אמחה את האדם אשר בראתי מעל פני האדמה מאדם עד בהמה עד רמס ועד עוף השמיים כי ניחמתי כי עשיתי ונור מעשה חן בעיני אדוני.
What's interesting is
ויהי אל האדם לרוב על פני האדמה ובנות יולדו להם.
Why did it start again? So what's interesting is you have a almost like a parallel between B'nai Ha'adam and Pnei Adama. You know, Pnei, B'nai, it's not like in meaning, but more so just in sound. But did you have any thoughts on any of that? I know that you only just jumped in now, but that you've been listening a bit.
I was going to say, on the parts that I listened in on, the whole repetition of Adam as a demigod falls into, you know, that's consistent with sort of a panentheistic take, where the idea that the human is the vessel of God, the temple of God, and creating something to inhabit.
Definitely.
Okay.
And yeah, and almost like this idea of like Adam Kadmon, given this was already, I think, after Adam has been, you know, divided into, you know, male and female, but this idea of Adam Kadmon almost being like a worldly god, or like a almost kind of like Metatron, or like this idea of like Yahweh Katan.
Yeah, I was going to say, there you're hitting into Metatron, Logos, you know, the whole Christ sort of concept area. That, you know, it's the same sort of idea.
Which also makes this idea that Adam created Seth, or bore him. So he doesn't create him out of nothing, but he gives, or not gives birth, but he, you know, what's the word? You know, he fathers, but like it refers to it like as if it's literally the same relationship that he has to God. But any other thoughts?
Now I was going to say that pretty much covers it here. I find those genealogies interesting.
Yeah, it's also interesting because it refers to the like the was it Toldot Shamayim Va'aretz, the generations or the lineages of the heavens and the earth, which implies almost like that maybe there was a context where originally those like, you know, the order almost implied that the first things were parents to the things that come after, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there's that one. One of the ones that I always wondered was, again, he brought that up in the one video about how if the flood killed everyone, you know, but Noah's offspring, what was the big deal about the, you know, the mark of Cain and all? You know, sort of like, well, yeah, that was a big deal for a while, but that kind of got taken care of with the flood.
Yeah, I mean, it just got transferred onto Ham.
Well, the explanation I heard to get around that one is not a bad one. Is one of the women, one of the wives, was a descendant of Cain. You know, Noah was fine in this generation, so were the sons, but it was the wives that were the problem later. It's like, okay, yeah, you got to, you know, I can see how you make that work. The other one is on the generations, and this is with mythology, is a lot of them I see, you know, almost a genetic history being traced there. I'd be interested to see how it lines up against, you know, the Y haplogroup spread and all.
Anyway, I do need to get going because I have something, but this was fun.
Cool.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Let's see. Where is it? Right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. All right. And then on that note,
I want to tell the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read them. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. Oh yeah, Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now. Mashiach now. We don't want to wait.